My name is Jim, and today we're going to be going through my workflow with the THETA Z1. And this is going to be the entire workflow, basically from taking the images off of the Z1 all the way to our final and finished product. So this video might get a little lengthy. Now, I also did include all of my notes right here. These are instructions with links, and I will put that in the description section so you can read through this if you don't want to watch the video. I feel like it's easier to just watch the video, see what I do rather than read this. And if you have questions, you can always come back to the video and you can kind of rewind, pause, stop, see what you need to do for the next step if you do get lost. I try to write these instructions out as clearly as possible, but some of you guys might get stuck, so that's why I'm making the actual video. So first thing that I wanted to talk about is let's just go ahead and talk a little bit about the THETA Z1. So this is a 360 camera. It's probably one of the best ones they have. Now they do have a version 2 that just got released. It just has more space on it. I believe it's like a 512 gigabyte model, but nothing else has changed. No expandable storage, no micro SD card slot, anything like that. Now, there is one thing that I do need to let you know if you are working on a Mac like I am. If you're working on a Mac with an M1 chip, if you plug in your Z1 via the USB cable it comes with, it will not show up as a actual device or a hard drive storage device. So I noticed that when I was on an Intel Mac, it would pop up sometimes and it would just say, you know, THETA right here. And basically I would just have a hard drive that I could grab the images and pull those off. Well, that's not the case anymore. So what you need to do is you need to download a couple different pieces of software to do this actual workflow. The first being we need Lightroom Classic, obviously, because that's what we're going to be working in. And then we need Photoshop because we're going to be doing extensive edits in there. But what we really need to get is we need to get these two pieces of software right here. One is a Stitcher software. And again, the links are in the description below. But we need to get the stitching software and we need to get the file transfer software. So the file transfer software is what is going to move the images off of your Z1 to your local computer for a Mac. Now, the Stitcher, you don't need that because on Windows it shows up as a hard drive. You can just pull the images that way. So we do have the Z1. I've already plugged it in. I've already imported all my images, everything like that, just to save time. But the first thing, go out here, get this THETA file transfer for the Mac. You can download it. There are different versions out there, but this is the most current version as of May 9th, 2019. Today it is Friday, September 17th, 2021. So they don't really release them that often, but you just go download, you install that, and you'll be good to go. Now, what you want to do is you want to locate that application. So we're just going to go down here and we're going to find the transfer. So this is the transfer right here. We're going to open up that application. It says connect the Z1 using the USB cable. Now, when you do that, you're going to see this window right here, and you'll see something like a DCS folder, basically an image folder. You're just going to take that folder, you're going to right click on it, and you're going to basically export it to a folder wherever you want on your local hard drive. Mine is right here on the desktop. I just called it Untitled folder. And then I just transfer every single image there. So that's how you basically get your images for the Mac M1 off of the Z1 and onto the local hard drive. Now, with that being said, all we have to do now is we need to go over the import into Lightroom. So let's just go ahead and open up Lightroom Classic. Now again, just to save time, I've already imported all of my images in Lightroom Classic. So we're just going to go back here to this folder and we're going to look at this. Now, this is what you will actually see as your image. So your image is basically going to be looking through a pair of binoculars. We're going to have these, black scopes around them right here. And that is because it is a raw image. So in the Z1, you can shoot in RAW plus JPEG, or you can shoot in JPEG mode. Now, I prefer to just shoot in RAW plus JPEG. There is no option just to shoot RAW. I wish there was, because I don't really need JPEGs ever. The reason we shoot in RAW is because we want to have more control over our image, and JPEG just doesn't offer all that data. So RAW, we get light data, and a JPEG is literally just an image with really no data inside, so you can't really adjust anything inside. You can, but it just doesn't work out. You don't have as much control over your images. So once you import all of those DNGs to your machine, and I do want to say, when you hit the import button, just hit add. So just go to your folder structure right here and just add those images. Don't copy them as a DNG again, because we already have them as a DNG. And then copy, we don't need to make a copy of them because we already have them on our local. We'll just waste more space. So you can also do move. So if you don't want them on your desktop and you want them to go in a different folder structure, you can do that as well. But what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to add them to the Lightroom catalog so I can view them in Lightroom. That's basically all we have to do. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to edit our image. Now, I wanted to make very clear here that in my workflow, I don't do any type of color correction. I don't do any white balance. The only thing that I do with these images, for very good reason, and I'll explain, is I only adjust basically the exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows, whites, blacks, clarity. Sometimes it just kind of depends on the image. I never touch vibrance or saturation. Now, the reason for this is because we want to have a 3D walking tour, and we want this image to look like the next image that we go through in the tour, and then the next image that we go through in the tour. And if we're adjusting our temperature, we might be kind of yellow here, which might look good, but in the next image it might be darker. And if we go shift our yellow, when the user walks through that image, it might be a really dramatic shift with the coolness or the warmth of the image, and we don't want to do that. We can adjust that in our final step once we start putting everything together. So again, highlights and shadows, really, and the exposure, those are the only things I'm really touching, and I'm trying to match those as close as I can from image to image right here. Now, in my little timeline here, don't worry about this. This is already like a done photo. I just already did this prior, but eventually we'll get to that point here today. So the other thing that I do have to tell you right away is lens correction. Do not turn this on. Now, there is a profile for the the Ricoh Z1. Don't do it. Just don't turn it on. When you do this, you will introduce ghosting on all of your images. People are gonna know. It's really bad stitching. It does not help the stitching at all. So don't touch this. Ignore this. Just shut this off completely. We don't want to have any lens correction whatsoever on any of these images. We also don't want to add any effects. We don't want to straighten anything in our image. We don't want to crop it. We don't want to do anything whatsoever. We need this to be as out of camera as possible, other than just going to our basic tab here and kind of messing with our tones and everything. And then once we're done, that's when we can go back into editing and do a little bit more with color balance and, some other things. So now, basically, what I've done is, let's just take this image right here. So I've messed with this image. I brought the exposure down slightly, brought the shadows up. Now you can do another step if you want. You can use the brush tool inside of Lightroom, but you do need to know that the adjustment brush right here, you have to be very weary of working in a 3D space. And what I mean by that is I'm just going to crank this brush up just for dramatic effect right here. We're just going to go to 0 here. We're going to go to 0 here. We're just going to go up 2 stops right here. And I'm going to try to make these trees a little bit more bright. And again, I'm overexposing just to show you guys exactly what I'm doing. So let's just say this is a perfect image right here, and I brightened up those trees. Well, if I were to stitch this together, we would have just created a line between light and dark. And what I mean by that is this image right here is the same image over here. So anything we do to the outside of our image all the way around, we have to do it to the other side of the image over here. So we would have to obviously brighten it up here, and that can get a little bit tedious, especially if you're not going all the way out to your edges and your corners right here. Because of this, it can create lines once it's stitched together and people can actually see where the stitch is. Now, this only goes towards the outside all the way around the image. So if I did something here on the bottom, that means I also need to do it here on this side in the bottom. Now, you do have more leeway when you're in the center of your image. So if I did want to do something over here, I don't necessarily have to do it over here because this is a different side of the image. So this is obviously the other side. So just be aware of that. If you're going to use the brush tool or the adjustment tool right here, just make sure outside and inside right here, you have to do the same thing on both halves right here, or else you'll see a line get developed once we stitch the image together. So now that that is all said and done, I'm just going to go back here and I'm just going to readjust this image. So we're just going to pull some shadows out right here, drop our highlights right here. Another quick tip is the histogram. You can click on these little triangles right here. Anything in blue is underexposed dramatically. Anything in red is overexposed, and you can actually keep that on and work with it. So right here we have a pretty good exposure on the sky right now. Everything looks good. Don't worry about the black. This is going to disappear from our image once we stitch it together. So you never have to really worry about the black in your images, other than if it were to show up in your images, you kind of want to get rid of that. So I just toggle those on. They're mostly on all the time. So if you see my screen and it kind of looks like this, that is the reason for it. So this image looks great. We are done. We have adjusted our exposure, our highlights, our shadows. Everything is good to go. Now, there are problems with the image, and we have to address those issues in the next step. So the first problem is we have a monopod right here in the bottom of our image. It's right here on this side as well. And then we have myself standing behind a tree branch, but I'm definitely visible. We need to address all of those things, and we will in the next couple steps. So what we need to do, though, is we need to export out this image, and we need to export it out as a TIFF. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on File. We're going to go to Export. Now, you can also export batch if you want. So you could select all of these images on your film strip right here, and you could basically go File, Export, and then you can do, a batch export at the bottom. So what we need to do is we need to get these images out of Lightroom. We need to create a couple settings, and then we need them to auto open in the Stitcher application. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to select our image right here, this first one. We're going to go to File. We're going to hit Export. Now, what I like to do is export location. Let's just go ahead and close everything we don't need here. All right, it's three things we need to do. We need export location, we need file settings, and we need post-processing settings all set. So those are the only things we're really going to touch in here. So I like to export as the same folder as the original. So what does that mean? Basically, this folder right here, these are the originals that I imported into Lightroom. I basically make a folder at the bottom, a subfolder, and I name it something. Now, I've already done all of this, and I've switched folders and moved things around. But yes, you basically want to know where those TIFFs are going to be. So you can call your subfolder anything. I like to keep everything together in the one project that I'm working on, but it's totally up to you on where you want to export your photos to. Now, the other thing we need to do is we need to go to file settings. Now, your file settings here, they can only be in two different categories. They can only be in JPEG or they can only be in TIFF, because the Stitcher software that we're going to be using only recognizes TIFF and JPEG format. So we're going to use TIFF because we still have editing to do. We want a higher quality image than a JPEG. So I always click on TIFF. I go to no compression. We don't want to zip up anything. I've been working in the color space, Adobe RGB 1998 forever, so this is what I use. Now, you can also use sRGB if you're going to keep it on the web, which we mostly are, but we are working in the color space, Adobe RGB. And then our bit depth, we're going to set that to 16 because we still want to have the best colors, the best part of our image possible. We don't want to start degrading our image before we have to edit and export again. So those are the settings that I currently use. And then we want to go down to the post-processing, and the post-processing, this is what's going to happen after it exports from Lightroom. We're just giving it a command to basically open up in the Stitcher software. So again, if you look at my description, it's going to link you back to the website, and you can download the Stitcher software right here. Now, this is for Mac and Windows. There's two links right over here. You can click on if you're on a Windows device or a Mac device, and that will be the software that we are going to use next. So download that, install that. Now what we want to do is we want to locate where that actual software is. So what I like to do is in post-processing, after the export, we're going to open in other application. So we're going to go ahead and now we're going to hit the choose button, and then we're going to locate where that app is. So mine is under applications. It is the Stitcher right here. And then this is the Stitcher right here. Now, this view that I'm using is on a Mac. I'm using column view. I always use column view on Windows on Mac because look at it, kind of gives us our path of how everything is working. On Windows, it shows you your path above, but this is just a nice view that I like to use. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to select our software. We're going to hit choose, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit export. Now, I've already done this step. So what's going to happen is when you click export, it's going to open up a little bar up here at the top where it says Photoshop Lightroom Classic. It's going to say exporting however many number of photos you selected. And then what it's going to do is it's automatically going to open up the Stitcher software. So I'm just going to go ahead and open it up manually, but this should do it automatically for you because we set that function. So it's going to open up this software right here. Now, in this software, there's a couple things that you can do, but I honestly don't do anything because all of the stuff that can be done in a 360 Stitcher software, it can be done with 3D applications or web applications where you're going to host your image. So if you go on Facebook, if you do Cloud Panel, if you do Matterport, if you do any of those, there are settings in there where you can adjust the walkflow or the walkthrough of your images. You can set the starting point or the center of your image. You can also adjust the pitch and the roll and the yaw. So it's I don't touch anything in here. You don't really have to do that either. So I just hit automatic settings on everything. And then up here at the top right now, obviously I don't have any images, but it will say you can do a single image and move on to the next image, or you can just do a batch process. So I just click on I think it's the second option. It will say batch process. You'll click on that. It will open up a little box on your screen and you'll see all of your images basically being processed. Now, once your images are all processed, what we need to do is there's two different things, or there's two different paths that we can take. So I've gone ahead. I do have my folder right here. So let me go grab that. So this is my main folder. This is the subfolder, and these are the finished stitched images. So this image right here, this is a finished and stitched image. Now here's the paths you can take. You can either right from here, right click on your image and you can open with Photoshop, and then you can go continue doing your edits. Or you can take the other path, which is the path I typically take, is I re-import all of these TIFF images back into Lightroom Classic. And I just add the images to the Lightroom catalog. So if we go to Library, we can go to Import. We can go back here to our folder structure. We can click on our TIFF Done. Now all these are already imported. I've already done this step. But I just add them. I don't copy them as a DNG. I don't copy them. I don't move them. I just hit add. We're just adding them back into Lightroom so we can actually see them. So if we are in Lightroom, you can see I have the 98 images right here. So these are all 98 images that I have taken. And now we are basically at a point where we can edit them. We can edit them more in Lightroom if we want, but we still need to go to Photoshop. So there's a couple ways we can go to Photoshop. We can right click on the image, and you can batch edit these as well. So I'm just going to do one single one just to show you guys how this works. We're going to right click on the image. We're going to go edit in, and then we're going to click in edit in Adobe Photoshop. We're going to click here, and we're going to get presented with this menu right here. So this is basically option B, or path B, that we can take, where we can make adjustments in Lightroom and we can apply those to the image going into Photoshop as a copy. So it kind of gives us a little bit more flexibility on our images. Now we can also just edit a copy where we forget about the Lightroom adjustments. So any adjustments I were to make right now in Lightroom, those would not get applied to the copy that's going into Photoshop. And then we can hit edit original, which is basically the same thing as you going through this structure right here, right clicking and going open with Photoshop. So you can get to that path two different ways, but I like to do and edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, because maybe I want to adjust the Lightroom a little bit more. Maybe I want to add more blue to the sky or do something quicker in Lightroom than what it would take me in Photoshop. And then I can bring that over. I can make a copy, and then it will show up as I believe 1A, or it might show up as 2 and shift everything down. So it's just nice to have different flexibility on how we're editing our images. Now, just for this demonstration, I'm going to go edit the original. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to hit edit here. This is going to pop open Photoshop. And now we are in Photoshop right here, as you guys can see. Now, I've already edited this image too. So let's just grab another image that I actually have not edited. And you'll notice that some things are loading very slowly. I forgot to build a couple things, but our next step in Photoshop is to get rid of the things that are flicking out. So the reason you're seeing this act this way is because it's my computer. The Smart Preview's never built for me, so it's not really keeping everything nice and clean. But let's just go ahead and grab let's grab this image right here. So there's a couple things in this image that are weird, right? First, we have the shadow of the Z1 in the monopod, and then we also have the monopod right here in the bottom of the screen. Now, what most people would do in this situation is they would import this into Photoshop, they would clone this out, and they would just crop their image up and say, okay, well, I'm just going to crop out the tripod. That sounds good in theory, but remember, when we stitch this together as a 360 spherical image, when the viewer looks down, there's going to be a big empty space right here. It will either be white or black, and there won't be anything, and it will look really awkward. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of this monopod, and I'm going to show you guys a quick and easy way to do this. And I'm going to show you this way twice. I'm going to show you it once how you do it, and then I'm going to show you how to build an action so you can actually do this. So let's right click on this image. Let's go to edit in Photoshop. Right here, we're just going to edit this original image. This image is going to pop up. So now what we're going to do is we are going to have to basically do a couple things to this image in order for us to edit out this monopod. Again, if you were to just start editing in here, you'll notice that things are bent, right? Things are bent. This shadow is bent. It's not a straight line because this image was a round image. So you'll notice that with the dirt and stuff. See how these images like get pulled? Well, you can't clone stamp that because the clone stamp essentially is going to just bring that same curvature over to the next spot, and it's going to look weird. So I'll show you that for a quick second. So let's just say we're going to take right here, we're going to take this image and we're just going to move it right over, and we're going to go like this. Now, there's already some weird things happening, as you can see. So if we zoom in closer, you can see that this image, it bends this way, but my clone stamping is now bending upwards, and it's looking really weird. And when it becomes a 360, it's going to actually look worse. So what we need to do is we need to do two things. We need to make this a globe so we can edit the image from the center outward. So this is how we do this, and it is in my notes in the description below. It's the instructions called removing monopod in Photoshop with the action creation. So I will put that definitely in the description so you guys can just read those steps. But what we're going to do is the first step is we're going to click on, we're going to go back to Photoshop is the first step. So click on Photoshop. We're going to click on image. We're going to go to image rotation, and we're going to click on flip the canvas vertical. So now we are looking at our image upside down. Now this is really weird, but we do need to do this step because what we would like to do is we want to make a circle where the earth is in the middle and the sky goes around the earth, not the other way around. If we don't flip our image, what will happen, and you'll see this in the next step, is we will have the sky in the center and we will have the earth around the sky. So the next step that we need to do is we need to click on filter, we need to go to distort, and we need to go to polar coordinates. We're going to click on this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to zoom out so you can see this happening. We're going to go to rectangular to polar, and this creates an earth in the center with the sky around it. So it looks kind of cool. You guys have maybe seen this type of photography before where people apply this and they have buildings coming out the sides and everything. It looks pretty cool. So rectangular to polar. If we click the other one, it's going to make the image like I said, the sky in the middle with the earth on the outside, which is very weird. So rectangular to polar, we're going to hit OK. And look at that. Look what it has actually done. If we zoom into our image, we can now edit the monopod out pretty nicely. We can also edit this shadow of the monopod out as well. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we're going to take our clone stamp, and we're going to just do a really sloppy job here. If I can grab it, let me see here. We're just going to go really sloppy, just make the same line because we're all about speed right now. All right, now this is the ground. Most people in panos, they don't look at the ground, so this looks fine. This is definitely passable. But now we need to turn our image back into the flat image. So we need to do all the steps that we did in reverse order. So the first thing we need to do in reverse order is we need to go on filter, and we need to go to distort, and we need to go to polar coordinates again. Now, you'll notice at the top of the filter, they've been doing this for years in Adobe. They always save the last filter you do at the very top. Now, this sounds really good, but this is just applying the same filter and the same filter settings that you've already applied. And so if you click on this, you're actually going to make your image work, and you're not actually working backwards because we did select a setting inside. So this is what will happen if you click on polar coordinates at the top. You'll get this weird bean shaped type image and all this weird artifacting happening. And yeah, this is not good. So we're just going to Command Z this. We're going to go back a step. So we're going to want to go on filter, distort, polar coordinates, and this time we can zoom out again. We can see our image right here, and you'll notice it has that weird bean shape because it's adding another rectangular to polar, but we don't want that. We want to go from polar to rectangular, and you'll notice that our image is getting back to the upside down image in the next step. So we're going to hit polar to rectangular. We're going to click on OK. Now we have the upside down image, which is perfectly fine. Now we're going to go to image. We're going to go to image rotation, and we're going to flip the canvas vertically again. And lo and behold, we're back. And now look at, we don't have a monopod or a monopod shadow in the image. Here's the images next to each other. Again, there is no monopod right here. Everything looks nice and clean. The lines, the rocks, all this stretched out stuff looks perfectly fine. It all blends together naturally. The other thing that we need to do now is we need to edit the rest of our image. So there is, I think I'm in this image. Maybe I'm not in this image, but let's just say I was over here, or here's a thing that we need to get rid of. Let's just go ahead and let's clone this bad boy out. This is basically where we're going to start doing all our edits inside of Photoshop now. That everything is done. We've removed our monopod. The image is back to normal. Again, nice dirty edit right there. There we go. If there was somebody over here, we could like edit them out and we can work, because we're working again with pretty straight lines on everything. Signs are pretty straight towards the center. They might get a little off center, but we still have a pretty straight line here as well. So that is our image right here. Now what we can do is we can close this image and we can hit save. And because we're saving the original, now when we go back into Lightroom, all of that stuff is gone. So the monopod is gone. Again, we forgot to build previews. So sometimes if you quit Lightroom and you come back in Lightroom, it might show that the monopod is still here. But if you just zoom in the image and you zoom out, it will go away to your edit that you actually saved. So it's just an issue with build previews in Lightroom. It happens from time to time. It also depends on the power of your machine as well. So here's another image. It looks similar. Let's go grab a different image altogether. Let's grab this image right here. So we're going to do the same edit that we just did, but this time we're going to make it into an action, because an action will speed up your workflow, because that was a lot of steps that we did, and we're going to have to do those steps for every single image that we take, and that would take a super long time. So how do we get around that? We get around that by building an action where we can build a set of instructions, hit a single button, and it will apply all of those settings that we actually want. So let's just go ahead and we're going to right click. We're going to edit in Photoshop. Again, we're just going to edit the original for this demonstration. Now, we need to do all the steps that we did prior, and it takes a long time. So now I'm going to show you how to build an action where you can just apply all of those steps. So actions are really cool. Now, you want to find your actions panel. So the simplest way to find it, if this panel doesn't exist, we're just going to close the tab group here, is we want to go to Window, and then you can click on Actions, and then it brings up our Actions window or our Actions panel right here. So now what we need to do is we need to create a new action. So there's a little plus symbol right here. It kind of looks like a medical health symbol. If you hover over it, it will say create a new action. Now we can click on this and we can name this something like Monopod Remove. All right. Now you can set this to a different structure if you want. So all of these things over here, these are just like a file structure of how it looks. You can make folders in here. You can put different actions in folders. It's called a set. So you can pick what set you want. There is always a default set by Adobe because all of these actions are created by Adobe. They come pre-installed with Photoshop. So you can save it to those actions. Just remember what you called it. Now, the other thing you can do is function key. You can basically create a hotkey. So you don't have to click this little play button every time. You can literally just set it as a hotkey on your keyboard. So like you can call it, every time I hit Shift F1, please apply this action. So this will actually speed up your workflow even faster, especially if you remember your keyboard shortcuts. So for this example, we're just not going to do anything because I'm going to have to show you the play button anyways. And then color doesn't matter. This is just something that you can set for yourself. So in my past, I've had a history where I've had a bunch of filters that mess with maybe like the color blue or the tint of blue. And so I make all those actions blue and I organize them in my actions. And then I know anything that's blue deals with maybe the blue channel or a green channel. But it really doesn't matter. We can just make this red if we want, or we don't need any colors. But for the demonstration, I'll just make it red and I'll show you what it does. So now is the time where we have to hit our record button. Now, there is something I need to let you know once we hit the record button. This is going to record every action that you do in Photoshop. And there is kind of a thing that I will show you. Another piece that we need to add to building an action. So if you're in an action and you're doing something and then you decide to click off something else and you click on an image or edit something out of the image, it's going to record all of that. And then when you use this action in the future, it's going to do all of the steps that you did to the next image. And we don't want that, right? Because every image is different from the other. So just keep that in mind. So I'll show you that and I'll show you a quick example of that as well. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit record. And now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go through all of those steps that we did, but we're only going to have to do it one more time because now we will have an action created. So again, if you can remember, the first thing we did is we went to image, we went to image rotation, we went to canvas vertical. Now it did add that action right here, so it's still recording. Now what we need to do for our second step is we need to go to filter, we need to go to distort, we need to hit on polar coordinates. Again, we need to click on rectangular to polar. We click on that. As you see, it added the other action in the step. Now, this is the point where you would probably assume you need to click on the clone stamp, zoom in on your image, and start cloning this out. but actually we can't do anything to the image when we're creating an action, because if we go to our clone stamp and we start to clone stamp this out, it's going to save all of those actions to our action, all of those steps to our action, and we don't want that because the next image might not have the shadow and we might not see this. It's going to cause problems. So what we need to do is we need to insert a thing called a stop, and a stop will allow the program from continuing on, going through all the steps of the action we've created. So this is how you insert a stop into the system. So the first thing we're going to do is on the right side, we have this little hamburger menu, and we're going to click on that, and we're going to click on Insert a Stop. So click on Insert Stop. We get presented with this little window, and it's going to ask us, what do we want for a message? So what I like to do is I like to say, edit away, dude. All right. Make sure that we don't have allowed continue checked. We want this to be unchecked, and we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Now, we're still not going to edit this image at all. We're just focusing on creating our action because it's still recording everything that we are doing. So now what we need to do is we need to pretend as if we edited this image. And now we're back onto the step of going to reverse everything. So again, we're going to click on Filter. We're going to go to Distort, Polar Coordinates. This time we're going to switch to polar to rectangular. We're going to hit OK. Then we're going to click on Image. We're going to hit on Image Rotation, and we're going to hit Flip Canvas Vertically. And now, at this point in time, we're going to hit the stop button. And now it has recorded everything that we need. Now, we didn't edit this image, right? Because we are busy creating an action. But now we're going to apply this action because it's saved in Photoshop. We can apply this to all of our images as we start to edit. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this Monopod Removal right here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to click the play button, and you're going to watch it go through all of these steps right here. So we click on that, and there we go. Now I have my message. It says edit away, dude, and we click on the stop button right here. Now we can go ahead and we can start to edit our image, so we can take this tripod out. So let's just go here and let's take this tripod out. Again, we're just doing a quick and dirty edit. Maybe we'll get rid of this dandelion right there as well. So, ooh, there's another one. I just caught it. Let's just get rid of that one too. So there we go. Now we're done with this edit. So what we need to do is we need to click on our next step, which is nice. It brought us to our next step in our action. We just hit the play button again. It plays through the next two steps, and we're done with our image. Now we can go and we can edit anything else out we need to, but basically we don't have to ever click on the filter or the image and do all of those steps one by one, because obviously it takes a long time to do that. So now I'm just going to hit the X button here. We're going to save. And now I'm going to do one more image, and I'm going to show you how quick it is with those actual actions. So here we go. Here is another image. We're just going to right click on this, edit in Photoshop. We're going to edit the original. Again, it's totally fine. Now what we're going to do is we're going to edit this out, and look how quickly I can do this. I'm just going to hit the play button. All right, there it is. Click on my stop button right here. We're just going to come in and we're going to edit this out. So quick and dirty edit. Nobody will know. This is the ground. Grounds don't look uniformed. Here we go. Unless you're in my yard. My grass looks perfect all the time. Okay, and then we're just going to hit this play button. And there we go. We're done. We're done taking that monopod out. So that only took about 10 seconds to take that monopod out of that image. And then, you know, we can close. So save and be done. Now you can do the same thing again. You can do this in a series. So I selected a lot of images right here. I selected 3. We can right click. We can edit in Photoshop. Now what this is going to do is we're going to edit the originals again. It's going to load up all 3 of those photos right here. So now we have tabs of our photos, and we're just going to go and start editing, and you'll just see how quickly we can, go through images over images. And sometimes they might take a little bit longer with trying to get things out, especially if you have patterns or rugs on the floor, but we're outdoors. It doesn't get much harder or much easier, I guess, than this. So this one looks good. There we go. Oh, I'm laying down. Did you see me? I was laying down in this image over here. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna run this again. Let's flip it around. So there I am. We need to edit myself out of this image as well. So let's just get rid of me right here, and then come over here and spend as much time or as little as time as you want, obviously, on your images. We're just going to hit the play button. And you saw I missed something, and look how fast I went back. I didn't have to click on the image, the rotate, anything, because we've already done that. We created the action for that. So this is why editing in Photoshop using actions is so powerful. Now, if we were to set a hotkey, it would be even faster because I wouldn't have to hit this play button. I could literally just hit the hotkey button twice on every single image. So I could have hit it once, and then I could hit the hotkey again, and basically it would play through here, and we're done with this image. So very nice and simple and easy to take out monopods. It takes a long time to set it up, but once it's set up, you can just see how powerful everything is. So that is my workflow. Now what I would basically do is I would edit out anything else I would need. I would save it back to Lightroom Classic. Once it's in Lightroom, now is the time where I can basically go to development. I can adjust the exposure, contrast, clarity. I can add a tone curve. I can add pretty much anything I want. Now, the one thing I will still tell you not to do is do not touch lens correction and do not touch transform. We don't want to crop in on our image or anything like that because the stitcher has already given us our parameters. It has given us how big this actual image is. This is 7296 by 3648. That's what we need it to be because that's what the stitcher decided it to be. So these images, let's just say, are all edited. They're done. They're ready to go online, which is totally fine. Again, going back to the beginning, if you're going to use the adjustment brush tool, if anything you do on the outside edge here, you have to do on the outside edge here because there is a slight overlap, and it would look really weird if you had a hot spot here and then when the image stitched together, it would be dark here. You would see that line go right down. So just keep that in mind. We're no longer working in spheres, but anything on the outside edge this time, you have to do on the same. Anything you do in the center, it's fine. You can do it in the center. So if I wanted to brighten up, let's just say these trees right here, this whole area, let's get it to something I kind of like and would look realistic right here. If we wanted to just do this, that's all we have to do. We don't have to do the same thing over here because this is a different part of the image. But if we did it on the outside, yes, we would have to do it on the outside as well. Now, basically, the last step you need to do is you just need to basically upload these to whatever service you're going to use. I use Cloud Pano. I've used Matterport before. I've also used Facebook. I've used all these other ones that are out there, and I basically just follow their guidelines as to what the size should be, what format it should be. If they don't accept TIFF, you could, export this now as a JPEG because you're done editing the image anyways, and you'll still retain the high quality or as high as quality as you can with the JPEG. But yeah, that wraps up the end of the video. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, feel free to hit the like button. Subscribe if you like this kind of content. I'll probably be doing a little bit more of this. And then if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments section below, and I will answer them as best I can, or as quickly, I guess, as I can. But anyways, everything in the description. Hopefully you guys understand everything. If you don't, just come back to this video and watch it. Until next time, I hope you guys have a good one. Peace.